Alrighty, hi everyone. As usual, just do the old sound check. Let me know that you can hear everything coming through. Really looking forward to this one. This is going to be a bit of a novelty for me. I'm kind of almost handing over the reins to Bert for this one with my notepad and pen ready. But yeah, just let me know that you can hear everything coming through. That would be one less thing to concern myself about. Lovely jubbly. Thank you so much for letting me know you can hear that all coming through and you can see the countdown. Very much looking forward to this one, as I do every week. But been chatting to Bert before we've gone live. My God, has he got a lot to go through. He really has prepared for this, as you'd expect with Bert. But wow, this is going to be, like I said in the thing posted earlier on social media, this is really going to be a masterclass. It really is. Just, it's always something to learn. And if I'm not mistaken, it's Kirsty's birthday. Happy birthday, Kirsty. Alrighty, changed it up a bit there, didn't I? Did you notice a few little differences there? Keep them peeled. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining me yet again for another live broadcast this week. It's a bit different than the usual ones because this is actually the first time we've got a guest returning, but it is because of popular request and also because he didn't get through everything. Those of you who remembered watching the previous episode when our good friend Bery Monroy was here, you might remember this. People have literally just been like completely in meltdown at seeing this stuff, and which to you is just, yeah, that's what I do. But to everybody else, it's like, wow.
Well, if I come back, I want to do nothing but demos, okay? I don't want to talk about my childhood or anything. I want to talk about how I do what I do. So I'll just do demos because there's a whole list of stuff I wanted to talk about, layers. I want to talk about filters. So when I come back, let's do it a total tutorial kind of thing.
We absolutely will. And yes, we will. And my God, has he got a lot to go through. We've been talking before I went live there. He's talking about all these things that he wants to go through. So I'm not going to waste much time here. Obviously, I've got a very, very small amount of admin, and that is just to let you know, if you didn't already, if you're not part of my email group, you'll know that my printing course is now available for pre-order. I've never done a pre-order before. I updated the page yesterday so that you get a little video that also shows you kind of a rough outline of what the content is, but that's subject to change, or subject to additions rather, because I'm going to be sending out a couple of emails very soon saying, look, this is what's in it. What else would you like to see? And also asking some questions. So if you're part of my email group, keep an eye out for that, because it's a huge, huge help when you do get the response for those. But before I bring the main man in, for those of you who maybe weren't here last time, let me just quickly play you the promo, Bert's promo that I put together to give you a bit more of a taster for just some of the kind of work that this natural born artist creates. It just blows me away every time I look at this. But let's play this promo and let's bring the main man in. Alrighty, we'll bring him in. But before I do, just a quick thing to mention. As Bert's going through this stuff, if you've got any questions, get them in the chat, because Bert's just hungry to kind of help out here. And I know that he did say before we started, let's get some questions in, because he likes to answer the questions. So this is your opportunity. You don't get these kind of opportunities very often to get the questions in for somebody like Bert. But let me just bring him in. I'm going to unmute him, make sure that's working. There it is. And I'll bring him in. And Bert, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, I can.
Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for doing this, Bert. I know that you said, look, you had all this stuff to do, but thank you so much for doing this. This taking time out, not just once, but twice for doing this. And I'm literally going to be handing over the reins to you, which is kind of weird, but I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it too. I love showing people and getting them kind of inspired to do something and get creative, So it's nowadays it's changed a lot. And in fact, there's a new ad from Adobe playing here in the States. I don't know if it's in the UK yet, but it's pushing their AI, right? And you see these three, a wall in front with two bookcases on the sides, right? So they've selected the middle bookcase and they type in jungle. So it creates a jungle. Then it has a little pool in the front. Then they put in leopard, but it puts a little leopard drinking out of the water. So I prefer to actually create the elements rather than describe them. Okay, so I still use Photoshop the traditional way. AI is cool. now, if I was still doing commercial work, yeah, it would save me a tremendous amount of time and effort. But for me at this point, especially in my paintings, the whole point is to go in there and recreate it, use the tools to how do I get that glow on that piece of glass? Those challenges is what I look forward to. So that's the
Cool.
kind of stuff I want to teach.
Well, I know there's lots of stuff you mentioned about using brushes and layers, maybe even channels and stuff like that. So listen, let's not waste any more time. I know that you're kind of raring to get going. I'm raring to start taking some notes. So if you want to just jump over to your Photoshop, I'll share your screen or whatever you want to do. But let's go for it, shall we? Let's go for it.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so people can now see your screen.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So that's Times Square, and I'm going to use Times Square because this is where I'm going to start. I want to start talking about brushes because being a painter, that's one of my main tools is brushes. Now, the brush engine was introduced into Photoshop in version 7. That's quite a few years ago. Version 7 introduced the brush engine. And it was really cool because I fell in love with it. I said, "This is wonderful." And I remember when they brought me in because I was one of the few alpha testers who was a painter. Most of them are photographers. So they brought me in to see this thing. And when I looked at it, I said, "Wow, I haven't seen anything this cool since pixel paint." And they all started laughing because it turns out that Jerry Harris, one of the guys who wrote pixel paint, is the guy who wrote the brush engine. This is Jerry right here. This is Jerry Harris right there. Let me move it over. And that's Jerry Harris. He's the guy who wrote the brush engine. He's one of the 2 guys who wrote pixel paint back in the day. But now I want to talk about brushes. Now, last time I was here, I talked about a brush. I used an existing brush, one of the spatter brushes, to create an effect. So now what we're going to do is actually start to create brushes in this session here. So the reason I got Times Square is I'm going to show you one place where I developed this brush for, which is way down here, down the street, way down here. And there's this little poster right here, right there. See this poster? All these posters are made up. These are real posters, but I made this one up here. Okay. Now I'll show you what that looks like. That's the poster. That's the poster that I created. It's Furball the Musical, starring Fuego, Pepper, Lady, Fatso, and with Furry, Chief, Fluffy, and Creep. These are all cats that I've had through the years. There's been a few more since I did this painting, but these were all the cats at the time. So this is Furball the Musical. And it's this furry effect here that I want to show. Okay, so let's go here. And here's this plain blank screen here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a brush, but this brush I'm going to create with an existing brush. So I'm going to use a brush to make a brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by creating this little selection right here, this little circular selection. All right. And what I'll do is I'm going to stroke this to make the brush. In fact, I'll make it just a little bit smaller. It's just, that's good. That'll be a good size. Now I'll get my paintbrush. Okay. Now right there's the brush I used the last time. So it just does that kind of a thing. Remember, I used it to make the rust. Obviously, I haven't done anything with it on my laptop since. But that's that brush. I'm going to use that for something else later. Okay, undo that. Okay. Now, let's get that circle back. And we get a little circle here. That's good. Now, I'm going to come up here and use an existing brush. I'm going to use, strangely enough, one of my brushes that are part of the program right here. These 3 are mine. Okay, and I'm going to use this one, the grass brush, which I've seen used many times. Now I'm going to come over here to my brush settings window where the spacing looks good. That looks good. I'm going to take off the transfer, take off the color dynamics, which was giving me those 2 shades of color there a second ago. And the scattering, we'll leave that as is. And the shape dynamics, okay, that'll work fine. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size. Let's go in here and let's get a nice big size for the brush. So I'm going to make it, let's see, what size is it now? Let me get the brush and bring it in. I've lost my cursor. Oh, there we go. All right, so I'm going to make the brush much bigger. I'm not in the brush. That's what's happening. Okay. There it comes. And, oh, it's really big. Okay, we don't need it that big. So I'm going to make the size, let's make it 400. Let's bring it down to about 400. That should do it. In fact, let's type it, 400. That should do it. All right. So it does this. Let me pull back a little bit. Okay. Let me undo that. Let's take the brush again and just stroke it. Let's say I want to stroke this. All right. So this, I'm going to take that path. Let's go to my paths over here. And I'm in the brush. So I say stroke it. That's what it does. That's not what I want. So I'm going to go and make a change in the brush settings window here. And down here for angle, I'm going to set the control to direction. See that? Direction. So now when I stroke it, you'll see it'll have a whole different thing here. Let me get rid of its properties. We don't need to see that. And now when I stroke it, I'm going to get that. See? So I'm going to do it a few times. See? There we go. That's what I want. So now I'm going to go in here and make the brush a little smaller and just kind of fill up this area in here. And in there. There's my brush. I don't need the path anymore, so I could just turn it off. There's my brush. Now, right now it's a nice deep black, but a deep brown, but that's going to work. Let me give you one quick hint about making brushes. Is using black will make that brush opaque. Okay, it is a solid brush. Anything other than black is going to be transparent based on that value. If I make it say with a 50% gray, that brush will be 50% transparent. Even if the opacity for the brush is set to 100%, it'll still be 50% transparent. If you set the transparency to 50%, that brush will suddenly be 25% transparent. So you got to make sure you use black. I use the dark browns, but it doesn't matter. It's just a demo, right? So now what I'm going to do, and for some reason I keep losing my cursor here. All right, there it is. All right, now I'm going to select. Now, this area is white, right? That doesn't matter. Let me set this to black and white. It doesn't matter. When you create a brush, anything that's white in that brush will be completely transparent. So right now I selected that and I come up here and I say define brush preset. There it is. I can name it, do whatever I want. Click OK, and it's good. See, there's the brush. So now we can delete it. Okay, there it is. Let's deselect, make the brush a little smaller. All right, that's what it's doing. So now I'm going to go into my brush settings, which is where I change the way the brush acts. So I'm going to go in here into my brush presets, and I'm going to give it a little more spacing so I can see the individual tips right there like that. I'm going to go into my shape dynamics. And let's go into shape dynamics. Okay. And I'm going to change the size a little bit so we get difference, just slight difference. Okay. And I'm going to change the angle. And you see that they're all spinning. See? So it's affecting every tip differently. I'm going to go all the way over to here. See? So now every tip is facing in a different direction. Scattering, I'm not going to deal with that. That shifts them away from the point here. So if I go here and I scatter, see they move away. If I say both access, then it really makes some chaos, which can be fun. But in this particular case, none of those things are going to work. So I'm not going to scatter them. But in my shape dynamics, I am going to set color dynamics right here. And I'm going to get some nice tones here. So I'm going to say I'll use kind of a burgundy kind of color like that. And for the background, I'll use a nice deep brown like that. So now the brush is going to do that kind of a thing. And let me just make sure hue jitter is down. See how it introduced a few other colors? So now when I do this, it's going to look like that. See? So now it's following those particular colors. I'm going to bring my spacing in a little bit more just to get them a little tighter. So now I have some text here. See? There's some text. Foxy. So this is a fairly good size, but I might make it a little bit smaller. So I'm just hitting my open and close bracket keys. And now that I have that, and I'm going to do it in a layer because I do everything in layers. So I'm going to create a new layer. and I'm in my paintbrush. So I go to the paths and say, stroke it. And there you can see that we have this nice little furry type. So it's real easy to go in there and create some kind of a shape that's going to take on an effect. And you can see it's going between the different colors and so on. And you can see that none of them are exactly the same because it's just every tip is at a different angle. So we created a little brush that gave us some foxy. Okay.
Superb.
Okay. So now let's go here to an old painting called Late Afternoon here. Now, this one here, this was the guest room in my house. I'm going to show you how a simple brush stroke can turn into a really cool effect. So I'm going to go real close here to this cloth on top. And you see a little embroidery on the edges here? We're going to create that effect. So I'm going to go in here and create a new file. And let's go with that. That's good enough. So I'm going to get black because I want it to be a solid and I don't want that little fur. So I'm going to go to a regular brush. Here, this guy right here. Make sure that the spacing is real tight. There you go, just like that. And the size is going to be really small. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create the brush. That's it. That's going to be my brush right there. So I select it, define brush preset. I can now get rid of it. And the brush is going to do this. So now here comes that wonderful brush settings window where I'm going to go in and make sure I'm in the brush and give them some spacing. Just so you can see the individual stitches. Go into shape dynamics. The size jitter, just a little bit of a difference. Just a little difference. And the angle ever so slightly. Set the control to direction again. So now when I draw, it's going to create this kind of an effect. See? It could be any color you want, but I'm creating stitches, embroidery. Okay. So now we're going to get a little more technical. Let me close this guy down. And let's go to this guy, this painting here. This is one that you saw in the little preview at the beginning. This for a long time was one of my favorite paintings because it's a lot like one of my favorite photorealists, this guy, Ralph Goings. This is the kind of stuff he paints. So I did something like this. And what I want to draw attention to is the pepper, all the little peppers. That is a brush. Okay, that is done with a brush. So I'm going to go in here and create the brush for that. Go with that same size again. Okay, get my paintbrush. And again, I'm going to use that solid one. Okay, let's go way up top, right here. And let's make the brush smaller. Click up here. Okay, make the brush smaller. And I'm going to create this little shape right here. Kind of a rough little shape like that. I'm going to do another one over here. And a third one over here. There. Select that, and that becomes the brush. So I go to my define brush preset, click OK. I now have the brush. I'm going to make it much smaller. Let's deselect, make it smaller. And what it does is that, right? So I go into the brush settings, which I love this control. That's the thing that was developed in version 7 of Photoshop. And I'm going to go in there and give it some more spacing so that they're individual tips. Shape dynamics, the angle. All right, so every one of them is different. Here, I will use a little scattering in different directions, like that. And I use the color dynamics. So now that I have all that set up, I'm going to go in here and let's say I use the black, and for the background color, I'll choose kind of a brownish color like that. And in a layer, because we're going to have a few of these. I'll go in here and start drawing these. See? In another layer, I might change this color to a lighter tone and this to a lighter gray. And in this new layer, I'll throw some on top of that. Now, I went in further. Let's see the painting again. I went in further to individual, once I had them, and added some additional little tones, like right in there. Yeah, these take a little time, but hey, I'm not in a rush. This is not a commercial job, so I can take my time. I add little highlights with dodging and burning and a couple of little things here. But there you can see all the different shapes. And once they're all together, they start to, you don't see a pattern. You'll see them all as being different individual pieces. So back to this untitled one here, you can see that there, that's how I start to create all the little pepper. Now, in some cases, I'll give it a layer style. Like, for instance, that last one I created, I might give it a little bevel and emboss and give it a little drop shadow. So it drops shadows on the ones below. See? So that's basically, and if I'm casting shadows on the ones below, like what I'll do in a case like that would be to go into that layer, come up here to layer, go to layer style and say, create layers. And this is turned off on my main machine. This is just to tell you that sometimes certain effects might not look good once you break them into their own layers, but I'll just say, okay. So then what happens is I'll take the shadows right here, see the shadows, and I'll clip them with the layer below. So that way you'll only see the shadows in the ones that are underneath it. I'll explain that later when I talk about layers. But here's another one. Now, brushes, once you create it, I mean, this is pepper. But let me show you something. Here's another painting right here. Now, I mentioned the last time that I usually work on individual elements, okay? Like the bridge was one element, this area down here was an element. I work at 200% of what I need, and then I reduce it to bring it into the overall composite file. The reason I work bigger than I need is so I can get a lot more detail than I can in the actual size of the image. So I'm gonna zoom in on this area here, but to really give you the details, I'm gonna go to the actual file that I created for that, which is the land left. And when I get in real close down here, you see the little stones on the shoreline?
Oh my God.
See,
I never even knew there were
stones?
people in that.
Yeah. So there's all those little stones, pepper brush, same brush, but in different contexts with different colors, it becomes all these nice little stones that you see all along the shoreline here and so on. And if you look at some of the people, remember I once showed myself taking a picture of my wife. There we are. These are all people from Times Square. So these two are not. These two are from Le Dome, another painting. But all these people are from Times Square. The cars I created for this particular painting. But yeah, there are people down there. So all kinds of stuff going on. See?
But just quickly with that there, when you're creating this stuff like that there, where you're saying, right, we've got that stitching, we've got the texture of the pepper, which Anthony Crothers, actually a friend of mine's asking, is it a similar procedure when you created the salt as well? But although are you doing it that way because this is what you do? You like to literally create everything from scratch? Because otherwise, are there things in Photoshop like the pattern filter and stuff like that you maybe employ? And obviously, when you went in to use the layer styles, I thought, I wonder if he uses layer styles. And then sure enough, you did. But then you mentioned there's individual highlights and shadows put onto the individual rocks as well. It's like, oh my God, just incredible. Yeah, well, so I'm just wondering, so is it, do you intentionally, because it's your background and you are what I would call a traditional artist, is it intentionally a challenge for yourself to create it the long way around, is what I'm saying, or asking rather?
It is a challenge. I'd rather create everything. In fact, you mentioned the pattern. I've never used an existing pattern. I have created hundreds of patterns in my lifetime, never used one of the ones that come with the program. I've always created myself. I create patterns for fabric and for well, I'll show you a pattern in a little while when we go into another painting. Okay, so there you can see that the brush was used for another scene, and all of a sudden it became rocks, but the feel is the same. It's just that different colors were used and so on. Okay, so And this is sunset. And yeah, everything here was created independently, including the little boat down here. There's a little boat down here. You can get it. See, there's a little boat, but it's all there. Okay, so I'm also going to talk about how I created clouds. That's a brush. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Don't save. Okay. All right, so clouds. You just saw the clouds a second ago. So I'm going to show you how clouds were created. And here we go. Clouds. I used an existing photograph of clouds to create my own clouds. So I go in here and I look for an area that's going to look really good for a brush. And this little guy right here is going to be perfect. This little ball right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to create it out of here. I'm going to go over to my channels and I'm going to look for the channel that gives me the contrast, which is the red channel. All the contrast is held in the red channel. The blue channel has all the noise and that kind of stuff. The green channel is the detail. Something to consider when you're making certain adjustments, like if it's a hue adjustment and so on, or getting rid of noise. There are better filters now, like in Lightroom, but back in the day, what I would do is I would apply the speckle filter to get rid of noise. I would apply it only to the blue filter, because what it does, it would slightly blur the contents of the layer to get rid of the noise, but you would blur the detail. So by applying a filter only to the blue channel where the noise is, would get rid of the noise, leaving the detail intact. A lot of these things have been, a lot of these things have been taken over since better tools have been set up. People have always saying, can I just do that with a filter? Can I just do that with a button? Yeah, nowadays, all you got to do is write a prompt. But anyway, the red filter is the contrast. So that's going to give me the contrast that I need. Now, remember that black is what I want. So I'm going to invert this filter here. And then I'm going to go into my adjustments and go to layers, or rather levels. And I'm going to go in here and darken it and bring the whites to white. There we go. See, there's my brush right there. Click OK. Now I have my brush. So now I can go in here and take a regular paintbrush, which right now is the pepper. So let's just use this guy. Hey, we can use the fur. Oops, not that big. No, actually the fur is going to give me too many spikes. So let's just go to a standard, this guy. Okay. And we go into the brush settings. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into here and just bring down the hardness just a little bit. So it's a little softer. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to go in here and make the brush much smaller. Undo. And let's get back to our normal size. Yep. Undo, undo, undo. Okay, there it is. So I'll get my paintbrush, which right now is really big. So let's just, I'm hitting my open and close bracket keys. So I'm just going to kind of encircle this with the white. Now I would really take my time if I'm doing it for an actual painting, but I'm going to kind of do it quickly here. There's my brush. So now I can select that and define brush preset. So now I create a new file here. Let's go to new. Use that same guy. I'm going to invert it so it's black. And in a layer, let's just say there's a little chimney down here. So let's create a little chimney here. And let's just fill it with white for now. Okay, so now in another layer, I'm going to start to create my smoke coming out of it. So I'm going to bring down the opacity to about 50% and just start to draw right in here. Oops, I didn't modify it yet. So I go into brush settings here and open it up, go into shape dynamics and do a little size jitter and definitely bring the angle all the way around like that. And now I can start to draw. And I have this smoke coming out. Now I'll make the brush a little bigger, bring the opacity down to about 30. Bring the opacity down to about 10 and make it even bigger. And there's the smoke way out here. And that's how I created the clouds, using clouds to create a filter, or rather a brush, to give me smoke. Now, of course, you can go out and buy smoke filters. There are a lot of them, but I take great pleasure in creating all my own stuff. I don't go out and buy a lot of things because Photoshop gives you the ability to create them. So unless you're in a hurry and you got a deadline, okay, go out and buy a brush, or just sit there for a few minutes and create one.
I'm glad you didn't use the render clouds filter,
Yeah,
that's not so
no,
good.
no. I'm going to create everything myself. Okay, I have one more brush, but I'm going to skip that one unless we have some extra time at the end. I was going to do hair, but I want to get into layers. So let's just go into layers. And the hair here, in fact, I have my wife, which is what I use. This is from Times Square. And you zoom in here on her hair, and you can see the hair. That is a brush.
Wow.
That is the brush that I created for that. Hopefully, I'll have time to show that. All right, so let's just close all these and open up. That was a fun little poster. And there's Times Square. I'll leave Times Square open in the background just in case I want to refer to it for something else. It takes a couple of seconds to open it. So now, let me open up my layers. Here we go, layers. Okay, now I do everything in layers. Okay, I create all my elements in layers. So here's let me open up the painting that I did this from. So just so you get the context of it, it's called Hamburgers. And here's hamburgers, and here's the painting. All right, it's just a neon sign. Okay, now let's just say this is a commercial job, right? And the client says, we decided to not go with the green neon down here. We're going to go with a red. Okay, well, by putting everything in layers, it makes it real easy to make a change. So I'm going to go into that file because, like I said, I create everything in its own file. So let me go to my desktop here and go to here and layers, and there's hamburgers. All right, this is the file for that neon. So we go over here, you see that it's got the layers and stuff. There's the file for the neon itself. See, there it is. Let's go in close here so we can see the details. There's the neon. And the client says, I want it to be red. Okay, well, I'd have to go in there and select that and change the color. No, I just go to the layer of the neon. I go into hue saturation, and I say colorize it. There's my red, increase the saturation, click OK, and it's done.
Brilliant.
See? So by putting everything in layers, it makes it really easy to make changes because clients have a tendency to make changes all the time. So it makes it real easy to go in there and make a change and then charge the client for a lot of work. But it just makes it a lot easy. And also, like I said the last time I was here, is by putting everything in layers, it gives me a stock library of elements that I reuse many times. Like the people in that painting you saw a second ago, the Golden Gate, those are the people that came from Times Square. So I spent a lot of time in Times Square. Every one of those people is their own file. And so I can then automatically, by changing the color of the blouse or whatever, I can bring it over and use it somewhere else. So now layers. Layers can be very important. When I first saw layers way back in version 3, that's when they introduced layers. Version 1, then there was version 2, then was version 2.5, and then came version 3. That's where they introduced the layers, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I've seen layers before. A program called Digital Darkroom, which was a black and white, the second generation of these kind of programs back in the day, had layers. But Photoshop took a while to get layers, but layers made it so much easier, especially if you're doing things like composites and you want to move one item over a little bit or something. Being in a layer makes it real easy to move. So let me go here and open up the next thing here. In fact, I'm just going to open all of these. They're not going to be in order, but I can get to them. It's just so they're all open. I don't waste time opening them each one. Whew, there we go. All right. So Now you created you showed my one painting, which I let me open it up because it's really cool painting. It is my favorite of my paintings right now. It's called Paris Courtyard 2.
Yes.
I come down here and you see that here's Paris Courtyard 2. There is a Paris Courtyard. This is Paris Courtyard 2. Now, there's a lot going on here. Now, everything is in its own layer. Everything is in its own file. For instance, there's a file for building left, building right, building 1, 2, and 3. So I have here building 2. There's the building itself. Okay, this is the file for the building. Now, I'll go in here and actually pull back. Let's go this way. Okay, so now I'm going to go in here and look at my layers. And this is the composite layer. This is the composite of all the pieces that went into it. Now, there are a lot of layers. See, a lot of different layers. Way back here, let's go into facade. Let's see, chimneys, cables, a lot of files. Okay, right side antennas, roof ridges, and this file doesn't have the facade. Oh, there it is. Ta-da. Okay, I'm going to open the facade up. Okay, and there you can see it has all these pieces in here. I'm going to option click on this just to see that. There's the facade itself. And there's a couple of pieces that I put into it. And there are other pieces that I'm going to start turning on, and you can see they start to form dirt and railings and stuff like that, right? So now, you see what's happening here? All of these are what's called a clipping group. This layer down here is clipping them. In other words, when I look at this layer, anything that's clipped with it, if it comes out into this area here, will only be visible inside the live pixels of the base layer. Let me show you how that works. Okay, here I got 3 layers, red, green, and blue, right? The red one is at the bottom. Each one is an individual layer. So I can grab the blue one, move it around. I can grab the red one and move it around. Now, here's the layer panel, and I'm going right between them. Now, if I hold down my option button, Alt on a PC, you'll see that when it goes in between 2 layers, it changes. So if I click there, click, there we go. Now you see that the green all of a sudden got hidden inside the red. Click there. Now the blue is hidden inside the red. They're still individual layers, so I can still move them around. I can change their opacity. I can give them a layer style. I can go to this one and give it a little bevel and emboss. Okay? And each one is being affected independently. The base layer, anything that I do to the base layer is going to affect them all. So if I bring down the opacity for that one, they all become transparent. If I give this one that layer bevel and emboss and make the size really big, you see that that bevel and emboss is encompassing all the layers that are part of the clipping group. So that's what was going down in that file a second ago. It was a clipping group, all right, which has all these different little pieces that go in there and make it up. So now, let's just turn on everything again. All right, that's all that stuff. And let's come up here and here's the building on the left. The building's on the left, they were there already. So let me turn on the chimney. And there's stuff up there. It's way on the top. Let's turn all these guys on. There's a lot of them. So there's more, and obviously the chimney. Okay, the chimney. Yeah, things are not on inside the group. Yeah, this one's okay. But I'm going to go down here to the windows. Let's go with chimney. Windows, here's the railing. Let's close that. Railing, facade, and let's go into the top floor right here. Top floor. This is the one I want to deal with. top floor, which right now you can see things are off. There they are. Now, here there's a lot of things going on. So let's get in real close and see in here, there's also another folder called Windows. Let's get real close on the Windows right here. Here, it's not a clipping group. They have masks. Let me click on one of them. Let's click on this one. And the mask is the shapes of the windows themselves. Now the mask, what it does is it goes in there and white will expose the contents of that layer. Black will hide them. Level of gray, because there are 54 levels of gray in between the black and the white. Level of gray, level of visibility of that layer. If there was a 50% gray in here, then you would only see the contents of that layer by 50%. So these have what are called masks. And did I do this? Oh, that's not what I want to show. Let's go back to here. Oh, I'm going way ahead of myself here. I'm in building 2. Yes. Okay. These are the masks. Okay. Now, actually, what I just showed a second ago is more clipping groups. Let me just show you those since I was there. Okay. This is a clipping group here. This is a very complex clipping group. Remember, it's the live pixels on the bottom that count. Okay. This is a marquee from Times Square. So now, if I come down here, and let's just see this. That's the basis of the thing. And this is the little neon, the little LED bulbs. See, tiny little circles. That's what that is. That layer is just little circles.
Please tell me you didn't brush every single one of them in Bert.
No, that is a pattern. See, I created a pattern there. Okay, let me unclip this here so you can see what happens here. All right. This is the scene that's seen in there. And yes, each one of these characters were created individually. They're up here, Hero 1, Hero 2. Okay, they're all in there. But right now they're turned off. And the bottom layer, that's it. So now, if I go in, let me turn on the background again. There it is. So now I'm going to clip the heroes with that layer that has all the little holes. And boom, now you only see them through the little holes.
Superb.
See?
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's how I got that effect. There are some enhancements on top of it just to make it lighter and brighter and so on. These are just enhancement layers. But there you can see that the clipping group made it look like all those things are inside those little tiny tubes. That's the clipping group. Now the masks, again, like I said a second ago, what they do is they allow you to see the contents of that layer inside that area. So now if I get in real close again, and let's go back into the art. Here's the art. Each one of these elements inside, let's start to turn some of those off. Okay, like here's the lamp. See, there's the lamp. And the lamp is a folder because the lamp has all the different elements, the light bulbs and everything that are in there. They're all in there. And this painting on the wall right there, that painting on the wall, that's Paris Courtyard. That's why this one's called Paris Courtyard 2. That's Paris Courtyard right there, which I did have it open to show it to you. Yeah, that's Paris Courtyard, a whole different painting. But
just putting in just quickly there, Bert. I noticed that Paris Courtyard was in the window on the wall there. My first thoughts were, please tell me he didn't draw that again.
No,
when flattened image and then put in there, hopefully.
Yeah, like my paintings are all over the place in Times Square and windows and stuff like that. I just shrink them down. Again, it's that stock library. Here, there's one up here. Here, let me come up here. Look, there's the one I showed a little while ago. See, there's late afternoon. The mirror on the thing. There it is right there. And that lamp came from Times Square. Okay, Times Square has so many elements that I use them a lot. The rest of this stuff here was all created for this painting. But there's always these little Easter eggs that I stick in there. And there's two of them up there. But that's Paris Courtyard, which in the Paris Courtyard painting, Paris Courtyard 2, it's right there in the window. Way back there, see? So the shadows, everything in here is created. So let's go back to Paris Courtyard. This one. Nope. Building 2 demo. There we go. So if we go and start turning off things in the window, you see that highlight. This one window was a little lighter in the scene. And here's the something. And here's these sills on the bottom there. They have something clipped, which is the textures. Here we got the dividers in the window itself. And there's the molding on the ceiling. And we have here the lamp. And here's the shadows. And so everything is in there. They're all layers and they're all masked to give me the sense of what goes in there. Now, layer styles. Layer styles are a godsend. I love layer styles. They came in with version 6 of Photoshop. We saw layer styles. And I use layer styles a lot because they just give me, like here, this shadow along the edge here is an inner shadow. See, along this pole right here, that's an inner shadow. That's a layer style. So let's go in here and look at layer styles because they can do a lot of different things. So let's not save this. Don't save. And close that. Close that. And now we're in the wrong order. So let's go over here to rippled water. Okay. Now, here I have this boat. Okay. Now, see the little thing down here? Okay. Okay. What's happening there is I've given it a mask. Let me bring the opacity up to 100%. Now, things are happening there, but let me dump it and create it from scratch. Here's the boat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the boat. I'm going to make a copy of it right below, and I'm going to do that, do a little flip vertical, and drag it down so it's directly below, right there like that. Now, I'm going to bring down the opacity. And give it a layer mask. So I just go over here and click layer mask. Now, let me show you something real quick about creating a layer mask. Is if I have this guy here and I go in there and select him. Let's just say I select him, make him a selection. Click on him. There he is. And I say, make a layer mask. Boom. Let's go look at the mask. See? There's the mask. Notice that part wasn't solid, so it's showing me that transparency. Okay, so to mask that object so that you can keep it separate from everything else in case you wanted to do something to it. Let me undo that. If I just selected a portion of it like this and go down here and say, make a mask. See, there's the mask, a little white box, and there it's showing me that it's just that area. All right. Now, if I just say, give it a mask, it gives me a white mask, which then I can go in there with a black paintbrush, and which right now is clouds. And let's bring it up to 100% and make the brush a little small. I'll use that brush. And you can see that it's hiding. I'm not erasing it. I'm hiding it. Okay. If I use white, I will bring it back. See, important things to know about masks. Okay, delete. Now, we're talking about layer style, so it's going to be a whole different thing here. I'm going to give the reflection here a mask, a regular mask, blank, and I'm going to change this gray, this black to a gray. I don't want it to totally disappear, but I want it to get really light. So I'm going to get my gradient tool, and in the mask, see, I got the mask selected. I'm going to go over here, and the white is going to be from here, and I'm going to click and shift down, and you can see that now we got a little more transparent as it gets further away. All right. Now, back to the layer itself. I might want to give it a little filter. Let's say we go into a little distort and give it a little ripple. Just a tiny bit of a ripple. A little too much. Yeah, that's good. Click OK. And we get a little ripple. Now, I'm going to go into my layer styles for the reflection. I'm in this layer. So I'm going to double click on it to bring me into layer styles. Here they are. Now you notice when you come into here, you're brought into this window, which is blending options. You have bevel and emboss, which I used a couple of times. You have strokes and inner shadows, inner glows, all these cool things. But right here in blending options, there's something very important for this water. Okay? Now, look at the water. The dark areas of the water are facing us. The light areas of the water are facing out, seeing the boat, which means you would not see this reflection in the dark areas. You wouldn't see the reflection. You would only see it in the light areas. So down here, blend if. Okay, I'm going to deal with these. Blend if, current layer, that's the boat. If I bring this down, at some point they're going to see the tones are disappearing. If I bring in the dark areas are disappearing. The underlying layer, which could be a bunch of layers, but it's going to deal with the underlying layer. When you move these, those areas, the lights, when I move the lights, you'll see that you're not seeing it in the lights. But I want to see it in the lights. I don't want to see it in the darks. So I take the darks and bring that over, and you see that the darks come through, giving me a more true reflection, because the darks aren't showing the reflection. Only the light areas are showing the reflection, which is the way it would work. So the first thing you come into, and there's a lot of other stuff going on here, like layer mask hides effects. If you've applied some effects and there's a mask, the effects will only work with the area that's visible. But actually, maybe I'll show that later if I have time. But that'll allow the effects to then be continuous for the entire image. But the areas that are masked out, you just won't see them, but you will see the image. So the mask, or rather the layer effect, or the layer style will continue around the image without being lost. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and the best way to learn this stuff is to sit there and play with these things, move them around. I have a file that's just shapes and gradients and stuff to see what things do when I get something new. I'll apply things, different things, hold on the option button, see how it changes. And so I always play with things. There's a lot there, okay? But that gives you an idea of what starts to happen when you first go into this. I see we're already getting down to 5 minutes. But anyway, let's go down to the next one here.
My microphone wasn't on then, but I'm just saying, I've let you kind of go on there. I mean, I've been taking tons of notes on this stuff here, but let's just give your mouth just a little bit of a break. All right, let's have a bit of sip of water, because I know you got a lot more to show. But let's just have a quick break. I'll let you have a quick slip of water. I'll just mute you for a second. Have a break, a well-deserved break, and I'll just dive over to here. My God, I'm not the neatest writer, but I'm scribbling all over the place. But Deanne's just asking there, is this being recorded? Deanne, yes, it is being recorded. It'll be on the YouTube channel properly tomorrow, and you'll see all the kind of comments coming in as well. But let's just take a quick break, give a bit of a chance to have a rest, and I'm going to take this opportunity just to play this little video about something I mentioned right at the start. Hi there, Glyn here, and I'm very happy to let you know that finally, after over 2 years in the making, my How to Print course is available for pre-order today and will be launching on Friday, the 30th of August, 2024. Now, when I started putting this course together, I had one clear goal in mind, and that was to cut through all the confusing technical jargon that normally surrounds printing and make the whole printing process much more understandable, repeatable, and effective, so that you can finally print with confidence and achieve the very best screen to print matching results possible, and especially so for someone just starting out. Now, it might sound odd when I first say this, but I'm actually kind of glad that it's taken me this long to get it put together, because during the past 2 years or so, I've tested more and I've learned more. And this means when the course is launched on Friday, the 30th of August, from day one, there will be more content than I originally planned. Now, talking of the content, I can hand on heart say that what I've put together is the most comprehensive course that there is on printing. And I say that because I take you through everything you could possibly want to know, even discussing your workspace and showing how to present your prints in mounts or on backing board, but also covering everything for both Mac and Windows users and Epson and Canon printers. Once you've enrolled in the course, you have lifetime updates. So just like with all my other courses, when I discover or learn something new, there's updates to software or hardware, or maybe even different processes. I'll put some videos together for it and add it into your course content for free. Now, just so that you know, the price you see for pre-order is lower than what the price to enroll in the course will be on launch day, which incidentally, when you do pre-order, is when all of the content will automatically appear for you to watch and go through. Now, I'm going to be posting out regular updates in my twice monthly newsletter in the meantime, so if you're not receiving that, just add your details in the section further down this page. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. But yeah, very happy to let you know that my How to Print course will be launching on Friday, the 30th of August, and that you can pre-order it today. I can't wait to show you all the content. Right, so that was me giving you a break from my voice and Bert's voice to listen to me again, but you know why. Right, let's bring Bert back in. Let's unmute him, bring him back in. Okay, Bert, over to you again. I'm pen poised, and I shall share your Photoshop right now.
Okay, well, I was glad for that break because, yes, I took a sip of water and I got to modify the brush I'm going to use next, just so don't waste time doing it while people are watching. Okay, cool. Now, I'm only going to cover one more thing of layers because I want to talk about channels for a second, and that'll be the end. I won't discuss filters, no time. But anyway, those layer styles give you all kinds of effects. They're pretty obvious. Drop shadows, bevels and embosses, all kinds of stuff that you can do. But it's how you use them in context with things that really makes a difference. Now, I brought up this painting here. It's called Window in Rome, and I want to draw attention to the walls themselves. You see the damages in the wall? Okay, let's go over here on this side here, and let's move this around. And you can see damages in the wall. See? All those damages. All right, so now, let me go in here and wall texture. Here's the wall. Okay, I created this is just the wall itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and give it a little layer, a little filter. So I'll go to Filter Gallery here, and I'll go down here to, let's go down to Texture, and we'll go to Texturizer, and I got Sandstone. There you can see that I've already got a nice little thing. The scaling's high. Click OK. Now I got a little texture for my wall. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a layer here, and I want to draw some damages. So I'm going to get a black. And I adjusted my brush so I can do stuff here. And I'm going to do this, like this, and make it a little bigger and do some over here. Make it real small and do something like this. And a little bigger. And we'll just kind of thicken it up in certain spots. And make a little thing go on here. Okay, those are damages. Those are cracks in the wall. They don't look like cracks in the wall. They just look like dirt, right? Really, somebody smeared some tar or something on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my layer styles for that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do right off the bat is the black is just the shapes. There are two opacities. There are two opacities in the layers panel too. Okay, so opacity and fill opacity. Opacity deals with how you see the layer. Bringing the opacity down will bring down the contents of the layer plus the layer styles. The fill opacity will only deal with the pixels that were created in the layer. Any pixels that are generated for layer styles will continue at 100% if I leave the opacity at 100. So I'm going to take the fill opacity, bring it down to 0. Now you see that they have disappeared. They're supposed to be like cracks, right? So I'm going to give it a bevel and emboss. I'm going to let's bring the light in a little bit, and the size can come way down. And let's have the light coming from this direction here. Okay, there they're going in. See, they're going into the wall. We can bring the light down a little bit. There we go. See, Now there are these little cracks going into the wall. I'm going to create another layer. And with the brush again, let's go in here and do this. Do this little guy here, a little guy here, and maybe a big thing over here. Let's make it bigger. All right, right there. I'm going to give this the same layer style. So I'm going to Option, Alt on a PC, and drag that little FX up to here. So it has the same layer style. So I'm going to go into the layer styles and bring down that opacity. All right. Now, by simply changing the direction of the light in the bevel and emboss to the opposite end, these are now bumps in the wall. See? They're now bumps. You can even, if you want to make them a little stronger, you can go in there and say, give them a little drop shadow, which I could bring them the distance in a little bit. And now you can see that those are bumps in the wall. The others are holes in the wall. And now we have little bumps in the wall to create the effect. And it's the layer styles that are giving us the effect. So it gives you the impression that it's going into the wall or coming away from the wall. So when you see them in the painting itself, which of course I closed. Oh no, I saw it. There it is, window in Rome. So there you go. So here, when you start to look around, you see that, all these there's a little bump there. There's some holes and bumps all around, showing the wear and tear on the wall to give you the effect. And it's all done with layer styles to give me that effect. Okay, there's a lot more.
One question with that, if you don't mind me, just while it's in my head.
Go ahead.
Obviously, you've got your image there, and then you've gone into the filter menu and filter gallery. Now, if I remember rightly, filter gallery, is it only for 8-bit images or 16? Because certain filters won't work, isn't there? If it's a 16-bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that won't work in black and white or lower reses and GIF files. There's a lot of things that won't work. A lot of layer styles won't work. A lot of brushes might not work. There's certain formats that will not allow you to use certain things. So what you have to do, especially if you're working in CMYK, a lot of the filters and layer styles won't work. So make sure you're working in RGB. I always worked in RGB. I made sure I didn't have colors. This is when I was working commercially. I made sure I didn't have colors that wouldn't translate properly into CMYK, but I wouldn't convert the file to CMYK until it was done. So I would work in RGB so that everything would work. Because in CMYK, a lot of the things do not work.
Sure.
Okay,
cool.
All right. So, okay, now there's a lot more layer styles. Go in there and apply drop shadows. Some are pretty obvious. How you use them is what's going to make a difference. But I want to cover something that isn't covered a lot, and that's called alpha channels. Now, alpha channels have been there since before Photoshop. They were done by these two guys a long time ago. One of them works at Pixar and stuff. But they are ways of masking, but a different type of masking. Okay, now you saw a layer mask, right? A layer mask will go in there and let me close these. Layer mask will allow you to go in there and see parts of the layer based on the color in the mask. Being a white will show it, black will protect it, level of gray, level of visibility, right? So let me show you. In fact, don't say, let me just go in here and open up what I want to do with channels. Because in one of them, I'm going to show the difference between a mask and a channel. So let's go back to desktop, podcast, channels, and this one here. Okay. There's a wall. So in a layer, I'm going to use a filter, which I love this filter. It's a really cool filter. And I go into render and I say, give me a tree. And there's many trees. Let's give, what is this? This is an oak tree. Let's go down and say we use let's use a maple tree. And let's give it some leaves. All right, we'll give it some leaves. Maybe not that many. Okay, that's good. We'll click OK, and then we have a tree. Okay, so now I'm going to take this tree and bring him over to the side here like this. Now, the setting sun, let's flip him. I notice I didn't change the direction of the light. Or wait, we'll just do it this way. All right, the tree's over here. And No, because the light's on in the background here. So let me just flip him real quick. We'll go in and say transform, flip horizontally. Okay, so now the light's coming from over here and it's late afternoon, so this is going to cast a big shadow. So I'm going to duplicate this layer behind it. I'm going to lock the transparency for it, lock the transparency, and I got black selected, so I'm going to fill it with black. Okay, so now let's unlock the transparency, and I'm going to go in there and distort it. So it's a long shadow like that. Click OK. There it is. I'm going to bring down the opacity a little bit just so that it has this kind of an effect, right? Now, it gets lighter as it gets further away, so I'm going to give it a mask. It has a mask, and I don't want it to totally disappear, so I'm going to go with a lighter gray here. And in the mask, we'll throw in this effect here. And you see it's getting lighter as it gets further away. There's the mask. It didn't get completely gone because it isn't black, it's a gray. So the mask is showing me here where it's white and slowly hiding it as it starts to get gray. If I went to black, it would disappear where it was black. So white shows, black hides. An alpha channel uses the same concept, but for a different purpose. So I'm going to go over here to channels, and I have a channel here already. You can get an idea of what's going to happen. I'm going to say, give me a new channel. Now, I want to see the effects of the image behind it, but I'm going to work in the channel. If you study reality and things around you, you notice that as the shadow gets further away, it starts to get stretched out. It gets lighter. I did that already, but it needs to get stretched out. There is a filter that does that. But if I apply the filter, the entire thing is going to be exposed. So what I want to do is I want to expose the area that I want the filter to take. So I'm going to put it right here as the white, and I'm going to go all the way to here with the black. See, there's my mask. Where it's black, it's going to protect. Where it's white, it's going to expose. Not to see, but to be modified. So now I go to the art, and I make that channel a selection, and it's showing me the marching ants from the 50% gray to the white. Okay, I'm going to just hide those marching ants so we don't see them. So now these guys are just as sharp as these guys. They're just lighter. So now I'm going to go to my filters, and I'm going to come down here and go to blur, and I'm going to use a motion blur. I want to go straight across, and maybe not that much, just a little bit. Click OK, and there you can see that I have a realistic looking shadow that's getting a little stretched out way to the left, a little less as it goes through the grays till it gets to this area here. It's not being stretched out. So you get a real accurate looking kind of a shadow. Got that?
Brilliant. Yeah,
okay.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So there are things you could do in an alpha channel that can be a lot of fun. So I'm going to show you something. Okay, I'm not going to show those guys. Right, all right, so let me open up in channels here, red truck. And let me open up the headlight. This is red truck. I did this many years ago, I think 2006. But right here, we look at the headlight, and you see all these nice little rounded edges, all these little edges in there that make up the glass itself. So let's go look at this file here, which is the headlight itself. Okay, now this is the file for the headlight. Yeah, there's a bunch of layers. But what I'm going to do is I have paths here. There's the paths. I'm going to go in here and create a channel for this layer, for this file. There it is. I created these paths. These paths are going to be my little shapes, right? But they're not rounded. The corners aren't rounded, see? They're just straight lines. Creating all those little rounded corners would have been very difficult. Very easy to create lines to give me the shapes. I now want to create those little rounded edges to my headlight. So what I'm going to do is in the alpha channel with white, I'm going to go and stroke that path. So I go up here and get my hard edge brush, make sure that it's solid. And I'm going to make it much smaller. About that size looks good right there. The brush set to 100%. In the layer style, rather in the alpha channel, I'm going to stroke it. There they are. Okay, actually they're a little too thick. Let's make it a little thinner. All right, I'm going to stroke them. There they are. Now I can turn off the paths. There they are. They're hard edges. I want them to be soft edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur it. Go in here and say Gaussian blur and blur it just enough to give me those little rounded edges that I want. Maybe a little more. There they are, little rounded edges. See them? So now I'll go into my levels and I'll bring in the blacks. The more I bring in the blacks, the thinner they're going to get. The more I bring in the whites, the thicker they're going to get. And as I bring them closer together, I got the size I want. I bring them all into one. And there I have my little rounded edges. So now when I come back over here, and let's say I create a new layer here, and let's just see just that layer. I will go in there and in the channels, go to my channels, and I load that channel and say I fill it with black. And there you can see that I'm going too thick on the things. But anyway, there you see I have all my little rounded corners. That's great for creating rounded type. Let's say you use you just have a Helvetica and you go with a bold. You bring it into the alpha channel, then blur it, then do the levels, and now all of a sudden your hard-edged Helvetica will have these nice little rounded edges. So alpha channel is a mask which exposes the art, which here it exposed the art, so I could then fill it with black, and it gave me now in the actual file itself. Let's go back to the overall image. There it is. You can see that it was filled with gray. Okay, I've gotten the last truck which I introduced on your show of last month. The headlight is a lot more intricate, a lot more detailed because things have changed, gotten a little more powerful and stuff. But there you can see how I used a mask, an alpha channel, to create rounded edges on a hard-edged shape. Okay?
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I don't know what else you've got to share there, but I know that there is one thing I want to, I don't know if I'm going to be jumping the gun here, but you mentioned about hair, and I know that we're going back a little bit now, but I'm kind of thinking that I know some of the people in the audience I can see here in the chat room there. I know that they do, photography, they do cutting out, masking and stuff like that. And I know that in the past I've used brushes to help me when it comes to almost faking the look of a cutout on hair. But I'm intrigued. If you're happy to, would you be able to dive over and just show us how you make that hair? Because that would do. I can just see that being incredibly useful for masking. I really can.
Okay. I'm going to go in here and make my brush a real tiny round brush. I'm going to use black. So I'm going to click and click, click, click. Notice they're different sizes, ever so slight sizes. That's good right there. That's going to be my brush. Select it, define brush preset, and okay. Now I can dump it. Now, I'm going to go in here and get a nice kind of a brownish tone, kind of a light brown like that. Okay, and it does this. See, that's what it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my brush settings window, bring the spacing down to 1%. Suddenly, they're solid, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fill this area here. In fact, let's just select an area and fill it with that color. Okay, in a layer on top of that, I'm going to use that brush, but I'm going to use a darker tone. So I get my paintbrush and I start to draw. Make them a little smaller so they're thinner, and I get thinner strokes in between. right? In another layer right here, I'm going to go in and get a nice kind of a blondish tone here, more like that. And this layer, I'm going to go in and just apply a couple of these. This layer is going to get a mask. I get my paintbrush and use not the hair, the fur. Let's go back to, say, this guy right here. Go into brush settings, and it all looks good. Let's take the brush pose, okay, and make it a little smaller. Make sure it's actually really, okay, the hardness is all the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, using black, and bring it down to about 50%. I'm just going to just go right through there and right through down here. And you can see that I've added a little highlight to the hair, see? So that's basically how I use hair. Now, many times I will use it with a path to create all the waves and stuff like that. And I also work on a 𝐓𝐻𝐶 𝐁𝐞, because there I have a lot more control of the movement of my hand, because I'm looking at my hand the way I traditionally draw. So I can get nicer swirls and stuff like that. But basically it's just creating a bunch of dots, which you then can go in there and apply. So if I go in here and get my brush, and we'll use the brush we just used a second ago, which is that one. And let's go with a, let's get a blue. So it's kind of a punky kind of thing, and we'll just add a couple of blue hairs in there. So in another layer, and let's make it a little smaller, and we'll just throw a couple of little blue tones. Oh, I didn't use the blue. Blue. There we go. And we'll just throw a couple of blue tones in there. See? So that's how I created hair. It's just a bunch of little dots to be many little shades of hair. Let me open up my wife's hair again. That was in brushes, and here she is here. So here, when you look at the hair, there are single brushes that I use. It's getting close here. These are single brushes, just aligned where I created individual little pieces, but the waves through here, those are all done with a brush. So all these little swirls and all this stuff here, see, these are singles for the little loose hairs, but all these little waves and everything else, these are done with a hair brush, which is just a bunch of lines. And there you can see the highlights, like the ones that I just showed you I created there. You can see little highlights in the hair in different areas. See all the different curls going around and so on. Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant.
And of course, the eyebrows are single hairs too. That's not a hairbrush. But these hairs are a hairbrush, which makes it a lot easier to get clumps and such.
Sure thing.
Another question? You have something else?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to just ask you, I don't know how involved it is to sort of tell us this or show us this, is that I noticed in some of the pictures there where you've got like a brick kind of surface, a pavement or a roadway or something like that. Sometimes it has almost like a wet look to it. Now, in the past, when I've tried to make things look wet, there's like a filter that I've used, which is the same filter within the filter gallery that I used to try and replicate the look of like a leather sheen and stuff. I was just intrigued as to how you create that wet look onto surfaces.
I'll show you one that has a lot of wet surfaces. Here, jazz school. All right. So down here, when we're getting close on the sidewalk, yeah, there's a lot of wet. See all the little shininess? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me create that for you. You're going to be amazed at how that was done. All right, so here's this. Here, let's just throw in a tone here. Let's go with a gray, going to a darker gray. And I just draw a gradient in here. Okay, do a radial gradient. Okay, so now I want to give this a little sheen, right? So in an alpha channel, I'm going to go to an alpha channel. I create an alpha channel. And in this channel, I'm going to give it noise. Add noise. I give it a lot of noise, like that. Click OK. Now I'm going to get in real close to look at this noise. See, it's just black and white with sprinklings of gray. I need a little more variety, so I'm going to blur it ever so slightly. I'm going to go in and say blur more. That introduced a lot of grays. So now when I go into something like levels, I'll go in here and bring my blacks all the way in and bring the whites in. Click OK. You notice now I have a star field. You see? Mm-hmm. So now go back to my RGB. I create a new, okay. I create a new layer and I'm going to load that channel. Now I don't want to see the marching ants, so I'm going to take them away. I'm just hiding them. And I'm going to use white. And I'm going to get a regular soft edge brush. Let's just start with this one and make it soft. All you got to do is bring down the hardness. Okay, the spacing's good. And with white, I'm going to bring the brush. Yeah, that's a good size. I'm going to bring down the opacity to about 50% and start to draw. See? I'm creating all these nice little sheens. I'm going to bring it up to about 80%, make it a little smaller, and just draw, make some lighter spots inside and some lighter ones down here. Bring it to 100% and really get some really strong highlights in other places. I'm painting through the selection of the alpha channel. So when you look at the jazz school over here, that's the little sheens that you see in little corners where it's picking up. These were actually just drawn. But those little highlights that we see on the sidewalk in certain areas, like in here, those were done through an alpha channel that has that star field in it. And I created in a big thing. And actually, let me just go back to here. And then I do something else to it. So let me make this put it into make it a layer. So let me just double click on, bring this down. Merge it down, make that a layer. And let me pull back so you can see it. I will then go in there and distort it. Oops. I want to see it. Get smaller. There we go. Distort it, and I grab this corner here. And I grab it and bring it down. I do it. Come on, grab it. There we go. I don't know why I was doing that. Yeah. Oh, let me undo that. I got to remember I got to deselect it. Okay. I just realized what's wrong with this thing here. I got it on that's bizarre. Am I in the right place? I'm in the layer. Okay. That is, oh, I think I know what I've done. Okay. Something strange has happened here. I'm not sure what happened, but let me get rid of this. Yeah. Let's deselect. Command T. There we go. Now it's working. I then move it like this to make it go off into the distance. See?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll drag these out so they get bigger. So they're getting bigger and getting smaller as they get further back. See? Mm-hmm. So I create that. The 3D functions have been taken out, unfortunately. Like for instance, in Paris Courtyard, what I did is I created a pattern. And Paris Courtyard here. See that going back? Now here it was just lighting. See, I created a pattern and then I made it into a postcard in 3D and moved it into the back. Okay. Oh, wow. Then what I did is I duplicated that layer and inverted it. so that the bricks were white. And then I gave it a mask, so I only see certain bricks are showing through. See? So it's this layer duplicated, inverted, and then masked to expose those to make them look like they're reflecting the light. But
Wow.
that's the way I started creating my depth when the 3Ds were put in there, but 3D is not what it used to be anymore. They created a 3D program, so it's a whole nother world.
Yeah,
But
sure. All right, let's jump over
that,
to your Chrome so we can see each other again. Let's just jump over to Chrome.
so the sheen is basically creating a star field. So that what I did there could be done for just about anything. You know, if you think about it, it's just how you use it.
And that's the thing. Watching you go through all that kind of stuff there, where you're clicking around, it's all very second nature to you. What kind of blows me away more than anything, and clearly it does on other people, because like Lee Churchill's put here, it's like watching a magician, and my friend Anthony's saying he's mesmerised. And Deborah's just posted now saying just amazing. Couldn't agree more. It's the fact that how well you know that bit of software. And it's how your brain works of thinking, well, if I want to create that, I could do this. That's what I find fascinating by seeing other people work, is how their brain works to figure out sort of challenges and come up with a solution for it. So, yeah, and that demonstrates it there.
Yeah, I play. Well, you got to realize I saw Photoshop 2 years before it was, Adobe bought it. There was no book. I co-wrote the first book. Every piece of software that I got in my life, I got before it was released. So there's no book. There was no YouTube videos or anything. So I sit there and actually play. I'll hold down the Option key and run my finger across the keyboard. And things happen. You find Easter eggs. You find all kinds of stuff in there. Things change. Filters will work differently if you hold down those keys. Not all of them, but some of them. So I will sit there and experiment and play. So that way I don't have the file on here. I should put it on here to show. But I have a file on my main machine over here. Like I said, that it has a whole bunch of bars. Some are black to white gradients. Some are multicolored gradients. Some are noise. Some are solid. Just to see, I apply things to the overall file and see how it affects different areas and see what it does. So I do a lot of experimentation. And that's how I come up with my techniques. Many times I'll just lay in bed and think, how can I get this thing? How can I do it? and eventually, if I do this and that and put these together, it's all a question of not one button. It's usually a question of putting a few things together. A couple of layer styles with a couple of masks, and you're going to get the effect that you want. It's understanding what the tools do. If you really want to be good at your craft, you have to master your tools. And that's what Photoshop is to me. It is a tool. It is my medium. I worked with oils. I worked with everything back in the day, but digital became my medium. And then Photoshop became the medium once it grew to where it is today. So
the thing that really got me when you were doing your stuff then, the thing that really got me was like when you just on that wall, that texture, and you just painted that black line, they went into bevel and emboss, and then it's like, oh my God, how it really did look like a little crack in the rendering on that. But when you look at it and you see you do it, and this is kind of going back to when you were on a few weeks ago, Mike Stapleton said, mate, it's so easy when you know how, kind of thing. And I had the same feeling watching that. Then it was like, oh my God, that incredible look of that crack, and that's all you did. But saying that, it's the advanced side of you is thinking that all I need to do is just use that. And I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure plenty of people in the chat there. We're guilty of overthinking what we need to do when really the skill is finding the simplest, most effective, and quickest way of doing it. Which obviously, clearly you know how to. So, yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to have to dive into the bevel and emboss a bit more from now on, because it made me think about little textures I could recreate. So, yeah, fascinating
bevel and
stuff.
emboss, I use a lot.
Yeah.
For so many different things. So I've used it. Every one of my paintings will have a lot of bevel and emboss, a lot of drop shadows, a lot of inner shadows, inner glows. And I keep in mind also, just like with filters, forget what they're called. Forget inner glow. Okay, maybe you want an inner shadow around the entire thing. By simply changing the color and the mode, you will get the effect that you want. Filters, motion blur. Okay, I used motion blur a second ago to get that shadow to stretch. I've used motion blur maybe 300,000 times in my lifetime. I think I used it for motion blur twice. Okay, so it's just forget what they're called, see what they do, because they give you all these controls. You got modes that you can play with, you got colors that you can play with, light angles that you can play with. So they have to give it a name, but it's how you use it that's going to make a difference. A thing that I use motion blur a lot for, which I didn't use on the boat, but it's usually for further scenes, is to create the reflections on water, where you can see the trees are getting stretched out and stuff like that. I've created that. On LinkedIn, I have these dreamscapes, and there's a couple there where there's scenes where the water is reflecting trees, and I use the motion blur of the trees in the water to make it look like a true reflection. So it's not what they're called, it's what they do. And to find out what they do is to play with all those styles and pump in different colors and so on and see what happens. And keep notes of what you've done, and you come up with new techniques.
So experimenting, don't be afraid to click and hold buttons down and click all over the place. You can't break it, apparently, they say. So that's the thing to do. But yeah, Bert, I mean, I knew this was going to be a bit kind of, whoa. There was a few people commenting there saying, is this being recorded? I'm going to have to watch this, really watch this again. And that's the way it is, isn't it? With Photoshop, you just see something, very easy to forget it. Thankfully, this is recorded, so people are going to benefit from being able to watch this over and over and over. So I can't thank you enough. I really can't. And I know there was more that you wanted to show, but look how long we've been going. An hour and 34 minutes. It's just gone like that.
Like I said before, I could go on for days, you know. I could go on for days.
Yeah.
In my lifetime, I've done over 10,000 videos. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that can be seen, you know, and it's all hand doing. You know, I've even done videos on retouching and stuff. But yeah, Photoshop gives you a lot of power to do a lot of different things. And then you combine it with other programs like Illustrator, which I use, which is my pencil on the canvas. It's mastering the tools is what's going to help your job flow.
Sure thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so there you go. Thank you so much for your time. Don't disappear. I'm going to obviously have a quick chat with you afterwards. But for those of you who out there that want to know more about what Bert does and find him, Bert, would you say the best place on social media is going to be Facebook for yourself or Instagram or?
Facebook. I don't do a lot of things on social media. One, because I rather, you know, it does take up, I get like 300 emails a day. Okay. So that's a lot of paperwork right there. I'd rather be sitting here painting, you know, or figuring things out, or working in my garden or building stuff, because I like to build a lot of things. I'd rather be physically doing than sitting there reading what somebody had for breakfast that morning. So I don't go on social media that much. I will go on social media when I have a new piece or to announce something like this. So Facebook. I do have a YouTube channel, and if they go to my site, bertmonroy.com, they have access to the YouTube channel. Though the YouTube channel is limited, what's on there is the making of Times Square, which is 14 hours of videos, which was taken down when lynda.com was bought out by LinkedIn. They took it down, and I started getting all these emails like, well, where's Times Square? I used to use it in my class to show my students. So I called up LinkedIn. I said, hey, can I have all those videos? And they said, yeah. So I put them up on, I made a YouTube channel, put them up on there, and they're free. So it's like 14 hours of stuff. Maybe someday, if I'm really bored or something, maybe I'll just sit there and create videos just for my YouTube channel. But for now, I'd rather just paint and then do things like this where I show what I did.
We would rather you do that as well. So, but there's lots of comments coming in now. People have loved it. I mean, there's still people saying, Deborah here has put, please have Bert back for more. Me and Bert will speak offline about that. We definitely will. But it's clearly gone down well. You'll be able to see all the comments. You can probably see them on your screen there. But again, thank you so much for this. I shall. Yeah, I'll catch you in the virtual green room in a moment, but I'll close this down and then we'll have a quick chat, and so you can have another drink now.
I'll tell you what, there's people that like to see it. We do one more thing. How's that? Can I do one more thing?
Yeah.
What time?
Yeah. If you
Oh,
want.
it's a quickie. It's a quickie. All right, let me switch to Photoshop. Okay. You
There's
there?
no stopping the man. We're there.
Okay. All right. So let me get here. I'll do something real quick because it's kind of cool. It's fun. See, I don't think on filters. Let me do this one right here. Okay. This is a Halloween thing. Okay, kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do here is in a layer, I'm going to use that tree filter. So I'm going to go over here and say render trees. And I will use this tree, but I'm going to take the leaves down to nothing. Click OK. There it is. I'm going to lock the transparency on it and fill it with black. And I'm going to make it big. Really big.
Already that works.
And put it right there. Okay. So now, there it is. But that moon is really bright, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the tree and put it right behind it. Right there. This one, it's still locked. So I'm going to fill it with white. So now, what I'm going to do with the white one, I'm going to take my move tool and just click it up a little bit and over a little bit. A little more right there. And then give it a mask. And in the mask, I'll go in there with the black and kind of erase it down here. Oops. Yeah, that's the white one. Okay. And let me make it a little bigger and soften it up. Okay, it's soft. And let's get rid of the transfer. All right. So I'm going to go down here and in the mask, let's make sure I'm in the mask. Yes, I am. Okay, in black. And I'm going to go in here and start to paint in the mask. I'm in the wrong tool. That's what's wrong. Okay. Let's make sure I got the right guy. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and start to paint those areas. And I'm in the mask. Yes. Okay. So let's make the brush a little bigger. Bring it down to about 50%. And I start to lessen the glows in certain areas where I don't want them. And there you can see I have the little highlights on the tree like that. And you get the effect. See?
Superb. So yet again, proving that it's just it's a simple thing. That's where the skill is. It's not a case of overthinking it. Just doing something that's now when you see it, it's like that's just so obvious. Now that you've shown it, do you know what I mean? It's just. But there you go, brilliant. But thank you so much. A couple of more comments coming in here. Legend from Anthony Crothers. I could watch this for hours, says Kirsty, and Deborah. He's a teacher as well as an artist. I think we fully understand that you just want to share, which is lovely. So, right, I've kept you too long. Go and get a drink. I shall see you in a moment. I'll close this down. But thank you again from me and from everybody. All right, lovely stuff. Oh my God, I feel like I've started Photoshop all over again. My notes. I used to keep notebooks when I first started out. I had one for Photoshop, and then when Lightroom came out, I had books. Just scribbling. So I've got to try and make sense of my own writing, because if you look at that writing now, you'd think I'm in the wrong job. I should be a doctor or something like that. But incredible, absolutely incredible. So listen, thank you so much for those of you who've been sticking around for what is the longest one we've had, but understandably, it's going to be that way when there's so much stuff being thrown at there, and just so generous with his time as well. Just brilliant. Talking to Bert, actually, I don't know if you've seen on social media, this past week, I had a very, very nice parcel arrive, and Bert sent me Times Square. The actual drawing, I've got a print of it. And yesterday took it down to the framers, and it just kept going wider and wider and wider. That is now being framed. So next week, I should have it back this week. Next week, I'll be able to show you that on the wall behind me. I cannot wait to see it framed. But talking of next week, yes, I am back. And he's definitely going to be here. He assures me we're going to be doing this. Nick Page is going to be with us next week. Can't wait to see, or share rather, his images and get talking with him, because, you know, Nick is one of those people that tells it like it is, but his work, God almighty, it really speaks. It really incredibly powerful landscape, seascape, and beautiful wildlife stuff as well. So very much looking forward to that. But there you go. Thank you so much again for sticking around. I love seeing all the familiar faces in there, all the names coming up and new people as well. There's some great attendance tonight. Lots of activity in the chat. Very, very much appreciated by me and obviously by Bert as well. But folks, I'll love you and leave you. I shall see you same time, same place next week, 7 p.m. UK for another live broadcast but this time with Nick Page. And who knows, I might get Bert back. You never know. At some point, I'll keep you posted. But thanks very much. I'll catch you later on.